I'm Fern, and for most of my life, I found comfort in the quiet hum of numbers. Growing up in Atlanta, in a small house with creaky floors, it was just me and my dad. My mom walked out when I was a kid, leaving me with a lingering sense that I wasn't enough, too heavy, too plain, never the kind of girl people noticed. That insecurity clung to me, making numbers my refuge. They were predictable, unlike people. Dad raised me alone, juggling his small business while teaching me to work hard, save smart, and keep my head down. Stability was everything, he'd say, and I built my life around it. By my 30s, I was an accountant at a mid sized firm. My days spent crunching numbers in a cubicle. My life was a predictable rhythm, safe, but dull. I avoided mirrors, hating the way my curves spilled over. A constant reminder I didn't fit the mold. Dating barely. I'd convinced myself I was better off alone. My confidence as small as the cramped office I worked in. Exciting hardly. The biggest thrill I'd had was when our firm upgraded to new software. A small victory in my orderly world. Even that felt like a stretch. But one evening, everything shifted. My college friend Tessa insisted I come to her birthday party in Midtown. I stood in front of my closet, dreading the thought of squeezing into a dress, my heart already racing at the idea of being seen. But one evening, everything shifted. My college friend Tessa had been hounding me for weeks about her birthday party at her place in Midtown. Come on, Fern, it'll be fun. You need to get out more, she'd said, and I caved. Though the idea made my stomach twist, I'd spent hours in front of the mirror, tugging at a dress that felt one size too small, hugging my curves in all the wrong ways. I'd always been on the heavier side, and it made me feel invisible or worse, like everyone was judging. My confidence was even smaller. A tiny flicker I'd learned to hide behind spreadsheets and solitude. But Tessa was relentless, so there I was, clutching a ginger ale in the corner of her packed living room, the music thumping so loud it drowned out my racing thoughts. Small talk. Forget it. I was ready to slip out early, melt back into my quiet life. That's when he walked over. Charles. He was tall, with an easy confidence that seemed to shrink the room around him. His dark hair fell just right, and his smile, it was the kind that could make you forget your own name. Or in my case, all the insecurities I'd carried since childhood. Hey, you're Fern, right? His voice cut through the bass like it was nothing. Smooth and warm. I nodded, gripping my drink tighter, my cheeks heating up. How did he know my name? Yeah. And you are? Charles. He leaned against the wall next to me, like we'd already been chatting for hours. Tessa mentioned you said you're the accountant who keeps everything running smoothly at your firm. Mind if I hang out here? This party's a bit much. Not at all, I said, my voice barely audible over the pop song blasting through Tessa's speakers. I tried to play it cool, but inside, I was reeling. Tessa had talked about me, and to this guy, he didn't seem like the type who'd notice someone like me, with my soft edges and lack of glamour. So, Fern, what's your deal? Why are you hiding out in the corner? His tone was light, teasing, but his eyes locked onto mine, like he genuinely cared. And then, out of nowhere, he added, You look stunning in that dress, by the way. It suits you perfectly. My heart did a flip, stunning me. No one ever said things like that to me, not without a punchline or pity. It caught me off guard. making me feel seen for the first time in years. Like maybe my body wasn't the barrier I'd always thought. Just here for Tessa's birthday, I said, shrugging, a small smile creeping in. She's hard to say no to. You know her? Work with her, he said, grinning. She's relentless with these invites. You're an accountant, right? She mentioned it sounds like you keep the world spinning with all those numbers. I laughed, surprised he knew, and even more by how easy it felt. Yeah, numbers are my thing. Not exactly glamorous. Sounds stable, though reliable. That's rare these days, he said, and I couldn't tell if he was teasing or serious. Either way, it made me smile. Hardly. It's more like keeping spreadsheets from imploding. I sipped my drink, feeling a little bolder. What about you? What's your story? Just a guy looking for a good time, he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. I do graphic design, but I'm stuck in a soul sucking corporate gig. Not my dream, but it pays the bills. We kept talking, the noise fading into the background. He asked about my favorite books, dog eared mysteries I'd read a dozen times, and shared his love for old sci fi flicks. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other forever. No awkward pauses, just flowing conversation that made my self doubt quiet down. When he suggested stepping outside for some air, I didn't hesitate. The backyard was a relief, the cool Atlanta night wrapping around us like a blanket. We sat on Tessa's rickety patio chairs, talking about everything and nothing, his hatred for his job, my secret talent for solving puzzles. The way Atlanta's skyline looked like it was holding its breath that night. As the party wound down, Charles pulled out his phone. Can I get your number? Fern, I'd love to see you again. My heart did another little flip. I wasn't used to this guys like Charles didn't just walk into my life, especially not after making me feel valued in a way that pierced through my insecurities. But something about him felt right, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Sure, I said, typing my number into his phone. His smile lit up the dark, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe my life was about to get a whole lot bigger. The days after that party felt like a dream I didn't want to wake up from. Charles texted me the next morning a simple, "Had a great time talking last night. Coffee soon?" And my heart raced just seeing his name on my screen. I wasn't used to this kind of attention, especially not from someone who had called me stunning, me, with my full figure that I'd always hidden under loose clothes, convinced no one would look twice. But he had. And it made me feel a spark of hope I'd long buried. We messaged back and forth for a couple of days, light and flirty. Before planning our first date, my nerves were a mess. I hadn't dated much, not since those awkward college setups that fizzled out, leaving me more convinced than ever that my body was the problem. I stood in front of my closet for what felt like hours, second guessing every outfit, finally settling on a simple navy dress that felt safe but pretty, though it clung a bit too much for my comfort. When Charles pulled up in his clean, unpretentious sedan, he flashed that same heart-stopping smile from the party. "You look amazing, Fern," he said, his eyes lingering in a way that made me blush so hard I probably glowed. The dress hugs you just right, confident and beautiful. His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, easing the knot of self-doubt in my stomach. For once, I felt desired, not pitied. He took me to a little bistro, the kind of place with warm lighting and the smell of fresh bread that made you feel at home. We ordered pasta, his with some cinnamon fancy truffle sauce, mine with classic marinara, because I didn't want to risk messing up my dress with anything too messy. Over dinner, he leaned in, twirling his fork like a pro. So, Fern, tell me something nobody else knows about you. I laughed, poking at my food, my cheeks flushing again. I'm not that interesting, but I can solve a Rubik's Cube in under a minute. His eyes lit up. No way. That's legit cool. You gotta show me sometime. Maybe I will, I said, starting to relax. Your turn. Any secret talents? I make the best breakfast tacos you'll ever taste, he said, puffing out his chest playfully. Challenge me sometime, and I'll prove it. Deal, I teased. And just like that, the nerves melted away. We talked for hours about my love for order and numbers, his frustration with his graphic design job that felt more like pushing papers than creating art. It was like the world outside the bistro didn't exist. As the night wound down, he reached across the table, his hand brushing mine. You're something special, Fern. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The next few months were a whirlwind, our dates stretching into a rhythm that felt both exciting and comforting. Charles showed me parts of Atlanta I'd never explored, hidden coffee shops in Little Five Points, a quiet park with a view of the skyline. We'd grab lunch near his office or meet after work, and every time, I felt like I was seeing the city and myself through new eyes. He kept complimenting me, saying things like, You carry yourself so well, Fern. But gradually, subtle digs crept in. One evening, as we walked hand in hand, he squeezed my waist and said, You look great, but maybe hitting the gym together would make you feel even better, stronger. You know, it stung a little, like a reminder of my flaws, but I brushed it off. After all, he was with me, right? I felt lucky, dependent on his approval to quiet my insecurities. Wasn't this what love felt like? Someone pushing you to improve. Things got serious around the 3-month mark. One weekend, Charles took me to meet his parents, Linda and Ron, at their cozy but slightly run-down house in a suburban pocket of Atlanta. Linda greeted me with a hug that nearly knocked the wind out of me. Oh, Fern, we've heard so much about you, she said, her smile warm, but her eyes sharp, like she was sizing me up, maybe even my figure. Ron shook my hand, his grip firm. Good to meet you. Fern, Charles says you're a wizard with numbers. It's not that exciting, I said, laughing. Just keeping things organized. Dinner was loud and full of stories, Linda's love for gardening, Ron's endless tales about his old sales job. Charles kept glancing at me, his hand brushing mine under the table, and despite a fleeting comment from Linda about watching portions for health, I felt like I belonged. A couple of weeks later, I brought Charles to meet my dad at his favorite diner. Dad, always busy with his small business, sized Charles up over coffee, asking pointed questions about his job, his plans. Charles handled it smoothly, and by the end, Dad was smiling. He's a good one, Fern, he told me later, after observing us closely. Seems genuine. Hold on to him. That approval meant everything. especially when my self-doubt whispered otherwise. One evening, a few months in, we were walking through Piedmont Park, the Atlanta skyline glowing in the distance. Charles stopped suddenly, his hands in his pockets. "Fern, I've been thinking," he said, his voice softer than usual. My heart started racing. "I don't want to wait. I know it's been fast, but these months have shown me you're it for me. Will you marry me?" I froze, my breath catching, a mix of joy and that nagging insecurity bubbling up. But looking into his eyes, feeling the certainty despite his occasional barbs, I felt the pull. "Yes, Charles," I said, my voice shaking. "Yes." Our wedding was small, just close friends and family at a venue near the Chattahoochee River. I felt like a different person in my simple white dress. Even if it accentuated curves I'd always wished away. My smile was so wide it hurt. Tessa snapped photos and I posted them online, my heart bursting with joy. Life as newlyweds was supposed to be all bliss and late night talks. But for Charles and me, it was more about unpacking boxes and dodging Atlanta traffic. We'd settled into a tiny apartment in Virginia Highland, cramped. But ours and I loved the little routines we were building, like sharing coffee in the mornings or collapsing on the couch after work. My body still felt like a source of unease. Those extra curves, a constant whisper that I didn't quite measure up. But Charles's occasional compliments kept me grounded, making me feel like I belonged in this new chapter. But one evening, as we sorted through wedding gifts, Charles dropped a bombshell. "Hey, Fern, I've been thinking," he said, setting down a crystal vase from Tessa. "What if we moved in with my parents?" I froze, a mug in my hand. "Live with Linda and Ron, like full time." "Yeah," he said, his eyes bright with an enthusiasm that felt a bit forced. "They're getting older, and I'd feel better being there to help. Plus, it'd save us rent money, we could build up our savings faster." It made sense on paper. My dad had always drilled into me the importance of being practical. And as an accountant, I even did a quick preliminary check on their house's public records. Nothing alarming popped up. No red flags about major debts. Just an older property in need of TLC. But deep down, the idea of living with my in-laws felt like stepping into a reality show I hadn't signed up for. Still, my insecurities nagged at me. I was lucky to have a husband like Charles, and now a whole family welcoming me. Who was I to say no? "Okay," I said finally, pushing aside my doubts. "If it'll help." A few weeks later, we pulled up to Linda and Ron's house in a quiet Atlanta suburb, our lives stuffed into boxes in the back of a rented van. The house was charming in a dated way, with faded shutters and furniture that screamed 1970s. Linda was on the porch before we even parked, waving like we were celebrities. "Fern, Charles, welcome," she called, pulling me into a hug that was a little too tight, her hands patting my back as if assessing me. Ron clapped Charles on the back. "Good to have you home, son. You too, Fern." I forced a smile, already missing our apartment's cozy chaos. The first few days were a blur of unpacking and adjusting. Linda was everywhere, popping into our room to offer towels or ask if we needed snacks. "Just making sure you're settled, dear," she'd say, her smile bright, but her presence suffocating. One afternoon, as I unpacked kitchen items, she hovered, eyeing my frame. You should watch what you eat, dear. For your health, portion control goes a long way, especially at your size. Her words landed like a subtle jab, heat rising to my cheeks. Charles, overhearing, just chuckled lightly. Mom's got a point. Fern keeps us all in check. It felt like indirect agreement, twisting the knife of my self doubt, making me question if I was overreacting or if this was just family concern. I'd nod, biting back the urge to ask for space, the air already feeling thicker in this house that wasn't truly mine. One night at dinner, the air shifted. We were eating Linda's meatloaf dry as dust. But I didn't dare say so when Charles cleared his throat. So, the house needs some work, he said, casual as if he were talking about the weather. The roof's leaking and the plumbing's a nightmare. I nearly choked on my potatoes. Work, like repairs. Yeah, Ron said, his tone heavy. It's been a while since we could afford to fix things. Charles glanced at me, then away. I was thinking we could all pitch in. I took a pay cut at work, so I'm a bit tight right now. My stomach twisted. I just had my own hours cut at the firm, and our savings were already thin from the wedding. But as an accountant, I was careful I'd pay in installments, keep every invoice and receipt in my personal files as a backup, just in case. Still, the word family hung in the air like a hook. I'll see what I can do, I said, my voice tight, though inside I was screaming. Linda's eyes welled up. Oh, Fern, you're a godsend, she said, reaching for my hand. Ron nodded. Your family now, kid. Family. The word felt heavy, like a bill I hadn't signed up for. Over the next few weeks, it was a haze of contractors and invoices draining my account. I wrote checks for roof tiles 1 month, new pipes the next, anything to keep the house standing, all documented meticulously on my end. Linda gushed about how gorgeous it looked, while Ron slapped my shoulder like I was one of the guys. You're a lifesaver, Fern, he'd say. But every time I handed over another check, I felt less like a lifesaver and more like a bank. One night, after a long day wrangling a pushy contractor, I collapsed onto our bed, exhausted. Charles sat beside me, his hand on mine. Thanks for all this, Fern, he said, his voice soft. You're so generous, unlike what your looks might suggest. It's for our future, right? The backhanded compliment hit like a slap, twisting my insecurities, making me feel guilty for even hesitating. Was I being selfish? Ungrateful for this family? I stared at the ceiling, the weight of his words pressing down. Right, I echoed, but my heart wasn't in it. As I lay there, listening to the creak of the old house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was pouring everything I had into someone else's dream. My dad's voice echoed in my head, work hard, stay smart. But I wondered if I'd been too trusting, too quick to say yes. Still, I was in too deep to turn back now. The house was starting to look like something out of a home magazine, all fresh paint and new fixtures. But the pride I felt was drowned out by the constant drain on my savings. As an accountant, I'd been meticulous, paying in phases and keeping records, but it still left me stretched thin. I tried to hold it together, telling myself it was for family, for Charles, when everything took a sharp turn. One evening, over a dinner of grilled chicken and green beans, Linda's usual chatter fell silent. She exchanged a look with Ron, her eyes misty, and the air in the room grew thick. We need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. Charles's fork paused midair, and my stomach tightened. What's going on? I asked, already dreading the answer. Ron cleared his throat. His usual bravado gone. The house? It's got a mortgage. A big one. We owe $300,000 and the bank's breathing down our necks. If we don't pay it off soon, we could lose everything. My fork hit the plate with a clink. $300,000, I repeated, my voice sharp. All the repairs I paid for. And you didn't think to mention this. Linda's tears spilled over. We were ashamed. Fern. We thought we could handle it. But with the repairs, we're in over our heads. You're our only hope. Even if you're not perfect. Her words sliced deep, a veiled jab at my body, my curves making me feel small and inadequate, like I owed them for my flaws. Charles wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe you could talk to your dad, he said quietly. He's got the means, right? It'd secure the house for us, for our future. I felt like I'd been slapped. My dad, you want me to ask him for that kind of money? My voice rose, and I didn't care. He's been dealing with health issues. Charles, you know that? Please, Fern. Linda sobbed, her hands clasped. This is our home. We've lived here for decades. I was furious, trapped by their pleading faces and my own self-doubt. I'll think about it, I muttered, pushing back from the table, my appetite gone. The next day, I called my dad, my hands shaking as I explained. To my surprise, he didn't hesitate. I'll help, Fern, he said, his voice steady despite his recent doctor visits. But I want a formal agreement alone with the house as collateral. If they don't repay, ownership transfers to you. Receipts, everything documented. No loose ends. As an accountant, I'd insisted on that structure from the start, quietly filing the originals with my lawyer for safekeeping. When I told Charles, he bristled. Why's it gotta be so formal? Can't he just trust us? It's 300,000, Charles? I snapped. He's being careful, and so am I. He muttered something about paperwork, but didn't push further. The money was transferred, the documents signed, and Linda and Ron thanked me endlessly. Their relief palpable. But something shifted between Charles and me, a coldness I couldn't ignore. Then the world broke apart. One afternoon, I got a call from my cousin. Fern, it's your dad, she said, her voice breaking. He had a heart attack. He didn't make it. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. No, I whispered, but the truth settled like a stone in my chest. Charles was there when I hung up, his face pale. I'm so sorry, Fern, he said, pulling me into a hug. But his arms felt stiff, like he was going through the motions. Grief swallowed me whole as I planned the funeral. Each day, a blur of paperwork and condolences. Dad's will was clear. He'd left me everything, including full rights to collect on that $300,000 loan. With the house as collateral, I'd already stashed the original documents with my lawyer months ago. My accountant, instincts, and the accumulating stings from Charles's subtle body shaming making me wary. Those jabs had built up, eroding my trust. One evening, exhausted, I came home earlier than expected. As I fumbled with my keys at the front door, I heard voices from the living room, Charles's, sharp with frustration. I can't keep this up, he was saying. Living with her is exhausting. She's too fat to keep. Anyway, it drains me just looking at her. Linda's voice was low, almost a hiss. Just hold on. Charles, we need those receipts your father-in-law had. Fern's got them now. I'll grab them and burn them, Charles said, his tone cold as ice. I broke into his place last week, got what I thought were the originals. Then I'm done, starting over with that heiress I told you about. She's got real money. My blood ran cold. I stood frozen, the key still in the lock, as their words sank in like knives twisting into my insecurities. My body now a punchline in their betrayal. The family I'd poured everything into my money. My heart was plotting against me. Charles didn't love me. He'd used me, and his parents were in on it. Rage and heartbreak churned inside me, the body shaming amplifying the pain. But I forced myself to stay calm. I slammed the door loud enough to startle them, pretending I'd just arrived. Hey, I'm back, I called, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Oh, Fern, Linda said, her tone syrupy sweet. How'd the funeral plans go? Fine, I said, forcing a smile as I caught their nervous glances. My skin crawled. But I knew I had to play smart. They thought they'd won, but with the originals safe and Dad's will on my side, I wasn't going to let them destroy me. Not now, not ever. The funeral was a haze of black dresses and whispered sympathies. But my grief was laced with something else, anger. I kept replaying Charles's words, his parents scheming, the way they'd played me for a fool. Back at the house, the air felt different, like the walls themselves knew the truth. We were sitting in the living room, sipping coffee that had gone cold, when Charles's mask finally fell. He looked at me, his usual charm replaced by a sneer. Fern, you need to pack up and go, he said, his voice flat. I found someone else, someone better, slimmer, more my type. The words should have cut deeper, amplifying every insecurity about my body. But I was ready. Linda chimed in, her laugh sharp and cruel. We're done with you, dear. We only needed your money. I leaned back, my heart pounding, but my face calm. What about the house? The one I fixed, the $300, $1,000 I paid off? Ron chuckled, like I'd told a joke. This is our house. Fern, you're nothing here. And those receipts you were so proud of, Charles added, smirking. Found them at your dad's place. Burned them. I let the silence hang, watching their smug faces. Then I laughed, loud and sharp, until their smiles wavered. What's so funny? Charles snapped. You're pathetic, I said, wiping a tear from my eye, still chuckling. You think you're clever. Those were copies. The originals are with my lawyer from the start. When Dad set up the loan with the house as collateral, default on repayment, and it transfers to me, I want it all back. Or my next call is to the police for fraud. The color drained from their faces. Charles's smirk vanished, replaced by panic. You're bluffing, he stammered. Try me, I said, my voice like steel. Ron tried to play peacemaker, his voice shaky. Fern, let's talk this out. We can figure something out. But I was done talking. Over the next few weeks, negotiations were a battle of wills. My lawyer handling the details based on the ironclad contract I'd insisted on as an accountant. They tried every trick, guilt, tears, even fake apologies. But I held firm. At their kitchen table, now legally mine, I laid out the terms. The house gets transferred to my name, or I press charges. No games. They caved. At the lawyer's office, the air was thick with tension as we signed the papers. I watched every pen stroke, ensuring no loopholes. When the house was officially mine, I slipped the documents into a folder and looked at Linda, who seemed smaller, deflated. These stay safe, I said, tapping the folder. No more stunts. The divorce was quick. Charles barely spoke, his arrogance gone. When it was done, I felt like I could breathe again. The day they moved out, I stood on the porch of my house watching Charles, Linda, and Ron load their things into a beat up van. Their faces were grim, their movements slow, and I felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. This wasn't how I'd pictured my marriage ending, but it was the only way forward. Word got around through friends. Charles's heiress dumped him weeks after the divorce, unwilling to deal with his baggage. Linda and Ron were stuck in a cramped apartment, a far cry from the house they'd schemed to keep. They tried calling, texting, even showing up with apologies, but I blocked them all. I was done being their pawn. One afternoon, as I sat in my quiet living room, a knock came at the door. Through the peephole, I saw Charles holding a sad bouquet of flowers. I opened the door, already laughing at the audacity. Really? Charles flowers? He shifted, looking smaller than I remembered. Fern, I messed up. I see that now. I want to make it right. I leaned against the doorframe, my amusement fading to pity. Make it right? You're not here for me, Charles? You're here because your plan fell apart. But this life, I gestured to the house, now warm with my own touches. It's mine now, not yours. His face crumpled, and he stepped back, the flowers drooping. Fern, please, we're done, I said, my voice firm. Don't come back. I closed the door, the click echoing like a full stop. Inside, the house was still, sunlight spilling through the windows. I sank into my armchair, a book in my lap, and felt the peace I'd fought for, not through luck, but my own smarts and preparation. The walls, once heavy with lies, now held my story, one of betrayal. Yes, but also of strength. I'd started caring for myself, hitting the gym not for anyone else, but to reclaim my body from the shaming that had held me back. I thought of my dad, his lessons about standing tall, and smiled. I'd lost so much, but I'd gained myself stronger, wiser, free from the weight of their judgments. The future was wide open, a blank page I could write on my own terms. I sipped my tea, turned the page of my book, and let the quiet wrap around me. Whatever came next, I was ready. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. You've walked with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and the fight to take back what's mine. If this story hit you in the feels, hit that subscribe button and join me. Every corner of this house, every step I take, tells a story of grit, grace, and starting over. Keep building your own path, and I'll see you in the next chapter.